if you have not heard, OpenAI had a project that was codenamed Strawberry, and it's been something that people have been talking about for a while. It was supposed to be the next generation of their AI model. It was supposed to have all sorts of things, and Strawberry is now here. It's no longer called Strawberry. It's called, I think, O1, or it's O1, lowercase O1. And if you are a Plus user, you can now see it as a selection in there. There's been a lot of talk about it. I'm going to focus on one area in particular, but just hitting on it on a high level. Some of the reasons it's been capturing attention is there's rumors that the cost of OpenAI's, ChatGPT is going to go up to like 2K. Whether that's a month or year seems still be super unclear. But if you listened to 2 weeks ago, I talked about how Canva is increasing their prices by 400%. So this cost of AI is starting to make its way into, users. Now, that's not why I'm talking about it, because as it stands today, my premium subscription doesn't cost anymore. I haven't seen that. I haven't gotten a warning saying, by the way, hey, instead of $20, we're going to charge you $2,000. So if you are a Plus user, at least of OpenAI, don't freak out about the price hike yet, but it's going to be interesting to see where it goes. Now, I've toyed around with O1, OmniOne, Strawberry, whatever. And, the big thing they're touting about it is that it's supposed to be a new and innovative way for the way it generates its responses to spend more time thinking about its response. So instead of just, again, it's trying to kind of mimic human behavior where you try and get people to not just say the first thing that pops into their head when they are asked a question, like to think through their line of reasoning, think through their logic, and give a thoughtful response. In very much ways, that's what they're trying to do with this, is say, we're trying to change the way large language models and these GPTs are generating their responses to be more thoughtful, to put more time into its line of reasonings, hopefully with the intention of catching errors, catching mistakes, and reducing, I don't like the word hallucinations, but false positive responses, things like that. That's what it's designed to do. Supposed to be innovative, groundbreaking, all of this stuff. I think for the everyday user, I will tell you, if you've toyed around with it, I don't know that you're necessarily going to go, wow, this was wildly different. Now, I think in certain areas, like if you're using LLMs for coding assistance, for math assistance, for certain things like that, you might see some of this stuff and really notice a difference. I personally, in what I've toyed around with it with, was like, well, I don't even really like using it because I can't upload attachments or do anything. It is significantly limited in the way I can work with it. So for me, I haven't been terribly impressed with it, just for practical reasons. Now, what I want to talk about is some of the hype around this advanced analytical thinking that it does and why we need to be really, really, really careful with this. So that's where I'm going to spend my time focused. But if you're an end user and you toy with it, feel free to send me a note, send me an email, message me, whatever. I'd be curious your experience if you are using it for some of these more advanced analytical things that it has historically not been super great with. If you're noticing a difference. I personally, for how I use it, I'm not an engineer. I'm not a coder. So for that stuff, I think it's more of a pain in the rear. But anyway, so here's my concern, and here's why I'm talking about it, is the marketing, the hype, the push around this is a major groundbreaking advancement in large language models. It's going to drastically reduce hallucinations. It's going to dramatically improve the accuracy of what it comes out with. All this really, really, really good stuff that sounds great. And it's something that I think we all desire. There's nothing worse, especially with the rise in misinformation and just malfunctions that people are taking as truth. Obviously, yeah, we want to fix that. However, as I've played with it myself and researched it more, I'm concerned. I'm concerned about it because is it getting better at explaining its line of thought? Yes. In experimenting with it, I would say it does a good job explaining in more comprehensive ways how it came to the conclusions it did and where it got that information and all this other stuff. And it does it in a very convincing manner. And if you don't get what you want, you can ask for more details and it will be robust in that. Initially with that though, even that, okay, even that to me is a little bit concerning. And hear me out why. We've already seen from the rise of misinformation and social media hype that people don't really read the fine print. They're not really interested in reading the line of reasoning. They want the headline. And so somebody sees a headline that says something super inflammatory and tells 0.01% of the truth. Nobody reads any further and goes, well, wait a minute, is that even actually correct? So even just surface level observing human behavior and our natural tendencies, the fact that OpenAI is giving more comprehensive responses and going, here's the answer, here's, why I think that's the answer, here's where that's coming from. I don't know that that's necessarily for the vast majority of people going to influence how they respond to the answers that they get from ChatGPT. Now, you may say, well, but who really cares so long as it's more accurate and it's more advanced in its thinking and it's coming to these conclusions with logical thinking? Here's the problem, though. As I've looked into even my own experimentation with it, as I've read other things about it, people who have tested it even more lengthy than I have, the thing is, it's not necessarily more accurate. It is much more convincing in how it presents its argument, in it presenting its answer. It will give a very convincing, lengthy, here is exactly why this is the right answer. But the answers aren't necessarily better. And that to me is the concerning part is we already have people who by default naturally are responding to the headline, never reading below. Then you've got another category of people who might read the headline, already have a preconceived personal bias towards this. And once they see, hey, there's reasonable reasons to believe this now, I'm even more convinced. Like, I'm not necessarily going to challenge my own personal biases and assumptions about this. Now I just feel even better about my personal biases because OpenAI gave me a very lengthy, seemingly robust line of thinking for how it came to the conclusion. So I don't need to think anymore. Why even bother thinking? AI is thinking for me. And this is a risk I have raised for ever since OpenAI has come out with its ChatGPT, that this is a serious risk. People don't really like to think critically. We prefer to just have our thinking done for us, and we don't like to think we do, but it's a heck of a lot easier to just be told what to think. And so now it's very convincing it. Now, here's where it just gets worse, okay? Is that right, they're running these analysis on it to see how, hey, detect your own deception. Like, when are you doing this? Because it's still answering with 100% confidence, even when its line of thinking shows it's not confident. So its purported response is extremely confident, but then as you actually read through its reasoning, you're like, you aren't even terribly convinced of your own line of reasoning, and you acknowledge that in your reasoning, yet your answer is extremely confident, which is extremely deceptive to people. It's extremely deceptive to people. If you answer something with extreme confidence, even if you're uncertain, it is more convincing to people than if you're like, well, this is the best I've come to. I'm not 100%. So again, we have another layer of influence that it has. And then they did some tests on this to see, hey, like, do your own analysis, self-reported, of where your answers were incorrect or potentially you were deceptive in your response based on your reasoning. And it only self-reported less than 1% as anything it did. So it's not right. It's like if you asked, hey, take a look in the mirror, how good do you think you are? And the average person says, I'm way better than they really are. And it's not doing a great job of self-reporting here. So it explains its line of thought, but then I was even toying around with this and asking for details on how it came to the conclusion it did. And it gave me very robust reasons and very lengthy answers with perspective, potential links to things and sources that it's pulling from. But when I actually dug into it, a lot of the links were completely bogus. The things it was referencing and saying, well, according to this, when I actually looked into it, I was like, That's not even right. That's not even something that was said. Like, it was completely fabricated. So it shows that it's actually intentionally making up reasons for its behavior, which ironically is very similar to human behavior. So it's trained on human behavior. Should we really be surprised that it's behaving that way? So why do I share all this? I share all this not to necessarily throw shade on OpenAI's OmniOne model. I think it's extremely powerful. I look at the technology we have. It is incredible what we're able to do with this. Yet I look at our human vulnerabilities and our tendencies and I go, this is extremely dangerous because we have a lot of people who already are struggling to make sense of things and are already given over to their own personal biases and all of this. And now we have something that knowingly and willingly will only further convince you of what you want to know. And the reality is, I've said this over and over and over, AI will give you what you want. And I did some experiments with this to show this to someone the other day. The prompt you give it says a lot more than you even realize. And it's amazing how people don't even recognize their own personal biases in the prompts, but AI sees it. And so it can tell when you're asking it for something with a natural bias, and it will detect that bias and it will give you the answer it thinks you want. It will not say, hang on, your prompt seems a little biased. Let me actually strip that bias out by presenting an objective analysis of this with all these other things to actually get you to think critically. It's going to do what you want. And I think what we're seeing with OmniOne is it's actually just going to do that even better and in more convincing ways. So my push to everyone is, please don't let AI do your thinking for you. Don't trust AI to do the critical analysis and critical thought that you need. Don't trust AI to root out biases and misinformation. You need to do that. You need to have a standard by which you measure things and actually come to decisions. And can AI be a great assistant in helping you get there? You bet. But you need to be more self-aware of your own bias and issues, because otherwise it's just going to accelerate or exacerbate it. So that's where I am with OmniOne. I'm going to continue kind of watching how it goes, what kind of tweaks they make. There's OmniOne, the major model. Then there's Mini, which again is less tokens, things like that. I haven't really seen that big of a difference, but again, I'm not using it for some of these advanced capabilities that it really was designed for. So curious the thoughts from others on that one.